Responding to violence with violence is like dousing a fire with fuel, not extinguishing it, but getting bigger. This is the principle that the Prophet taught preaching in the midst of his people. Evidently, in just 23 years the religion of Islam can be widely spread with so many adherents. One of the most concrete evidence is during the Wada, Hajj, the last pilgrimage of the Prophet. A total of approximately 114,000 from all over the Arab nation attended with Muslim status. There are many verses and hadiths that mention the Prophet's gentle nature in preaching, one of which is the following word of Allah. So it is by the mercy of Allah that you are gentle with them. If you had been harsh and harsh-hearted, they would have withdrawn from your neighborhood. So forgive them, ask forgiveness for them, and consult with them in the matter. Then when you have made up your minds, then put your trust in Allah. Verily, Allah loves those who put their trust in Him. Quran Surah Al-Imran verse 159. The verse confirms one of the Prophet's basic principles in preaching, which is to be gentle. Because it is with gentleness that hard hearts will melt. Conversely, a hard attitude will actually make people run away. The above verse also instructs the Prophet to always forgive his people who do wrong. In the course of dawah, of course the Prophet encountered many people who were insolent, and he was always open-minded to forgive. One of the historical events in the Prophet's preaching that illustrates the gentleness of his heart is when inviting the people of Thaif to embrace Islam. With a polite invitation, without coercion, and without violence, the Prophet invited them to believe in the religion of revelation. But unexpectedly, the population's response was very bad. They flatly rejected the Prophet's teachings. Not only that, they also collectively expelled him with indecent treatment. From children, old, young, all of them pelted the Prophet with pebbles, even while berating, "Muhammad is a liar." In response, Archangel Gabriel offered the Prophet to burn down the entire population of Thaif. If necessary, Gabriel would overturn the mountains so that they would all perish. But the Prophet wisely refused Gabriel's offer. The Prophet forgave them all and even prayed for guidance. At that time the Prophet said, "Indeed, Allah did not send me to be a corrupter or a curser. Rather, Allah sent me to be a caller and a bearer of mercy. O Allah, guide my people for they are ignorant." Hadith narrated by Bayhaqi. One of the mirrors of responding to violence with another gentleness that the Prophet did was towards a Jew. It is said that the Quraysh people who were already unhappy with the Prophet's preaching continued to make efforts to stop his preaching activities. Once upon a time they hired a Jew to spit on the Prophet. The Jew always stood by on the road to the Kaaba which the Prophet usually traveled. Every time the Prophet passed by, the man would call him. The Prophet, who always respected others, turned around. The Jew then spat at him. Seeing the insolent treatment of the person did not make him the least bit angry. The next day when the Prophet passed that way, the Jew called him again and did the same thing. This happened for several days, until once he did not find him in his usual place. After searching and finding out that he was sick, the Prophet bought some fruit and visited him. Finding the person he had been spitting on visiting him, made the Jew melt and regret his treatment so far. Long story short, he apologized and in one narration it is mentioned that he converted to Islam. During my illness no one has ever visited me, not even Abu Jahl who has hired me to spit on you. However, you, whom I have spat on many times, came to visit me, said the Jew touched. The two stories of the people of Thaif and a Jew are some of the many stories that show the great compassion of the Prophet in interacting with his people. Thanks to this attitude, the Prophet had great success in preaching the teachings of Islam, even though the historical record mentions not a few people who strongly challenged the Prophet's teachings. This is proof that gentleness can subdue any amount of violence.